This is the Sales Gravy Podcast. Hi, I'm Jeb Blunt, best-selling author of Fanatical Prospecting, Objections, Sales EQ, and Inked, and I'm here to help you open more doors, close bigger deals, and rock your commission check. Welcome to a new segment of the Sales Gravy Podcast that we'll be producing every other Wednesday. I'm your host, Jeb Blunt Sr., and this is Ask Jeb, where listeners call in and ask me real-world questions about their biggest sales, revenue growth, business, and leadership challenges. Look, here at Sales Gravy, we know firsthand how critical sales professionals are to the heartbeat of the economy. You are the driving force behind innovation and revenue growth for your companies. Without you, your hustle, determination, and relentless pursuit of results, businesses just don't move forward. You are the elite athletes of the business world, and every person at your company owes their job to you. So on Sales Gravy Ask Jeb episodes, you are in control. You drive the agenda, not me. For my part, though, I promise to give you straight answers, and I will tell you the truth. You see, here at Sales Gravy, we're not just talking about sales from the sidelines, we're doing sales. We're not one-hit wonders who had a good year and suddenly started calling themselves a guru. We're practitioners. We're in the trenches. We're making calls, closing deals, and we're working with top sales organizations all over the world. And I'm selling every single day just like you. And so are my trainers and coaches. Everyone on the Sales Gravy team carries a bag. All right, let's get started. Next up on the show is Eric from Lewiston, Maine. I love this great state of Maine. Eric, how are you doing?
Thanks, Sue. I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Doing great. So what's happening in your world?
Yeah, so we just listened to one of your podcasts, Seller with a Personal Business Plan, and we loved it because it is time of year. We've been having the conversations around business plan and looking at it 2025. So listening to it, talking specifically about sales casting and creating targets, like number of calls, number of new leads, because, I loved how you broke it down and said, look, if you haven't talked about those things, then you really don't have a plan. You can't just say, we're going to call all day. You really need a plan. So what company sales data from like the previous year just look at to help create those targets? We like an overall gross revenue target, but we're curious of what you think we should be looking at from the previous years that could help us better get a more accurate number in the new year, or more accurate plan for the new year.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you look back, and I've got to it's funny that you asked me this question. I've gotten several text messages from people who listened to that Money Monday episode on personal business planning who've asked the same question about how do you plan or how do you set targets for the next year? And some of it is business dependent. So in some businesses where you're chasing, say, market share, you're going to have a different set of goals than a business where you're chasing gross revenue. And in some business where the gross profit matters more than revenue, that may be a goal as well. So I think if you look back on the year and you say, what were the metrics from last year that mattered? One of those metrics might be, what's your conversion rate from your inbound leads? So if I got inbound leads in, so you're running marketing programs, what was your actual conversion rate? One of the things that we're looking at right now with our inbound leads is, what is our speed to lead? So we took a look at all of our inbound leads from last year. And because we've got a pretty good system for this, we can see how many minutes it took for us to then follow up on that lead. And one of our goals this year is to cut that in half at least, because we know empirically through data that if we call a lead faster, we're more likely to convert it. So you might look at data like that. One of the things you can look at is your ratios throughout the entire system. So if you said we put this many new opportunities in the pipeline, so it took us this many outbound prospecting touches, and you can then break those touches down by telephone, in person, could be direct messaging on LinkedIn, for example, could be videos, could be emails, whatever you were using, you break all that down and said, we made this many touches to then put this many opportunities in the pipeline. At the same time, if you look at it from an inbound standpoint, you could look at your outbound and your inbound funnels all the way in. So you made this many touches to put this many in the pipeline. So if you increase the number of touches, based on your current statistics, how many more deals would you put in the pipeline, and what would that create at the end of the year in terms of total new opportunities or total new deals sold? Then you might look at new deals put in the pipeline or what I call first-time appointments. But if you've got these first-time opportunities or first-time appointments, how many of those first-time appointments then converted into next steps? So that's a ratio as well. So you could look at that. And then you might say, well, if we were to increase the number of first-time appointments that moved into a real pipeline opportunity into a next step, and we increase that by 25%, what would that do for us? And then you might look at your pipeline opportunities, and how many of those converted into a proposal, and then how many of your proposals converted into a sale, and then how many of those sales converted into an upsell or a cross-sell or expansion sell. And you can run those all the way down through your funnel. And the reason that works really well, and I write about this in Objections, and there's a chapter in Objections called Yes Has a Number, and it just runs you through this exercise. But what you're looking at is all the way through the funnel, all the way down, and break it into as many pieces in your business that matter in terms of metrics that matter for your business. And you look at that, then you can actually start running some math around that. So if you wanted to double your sales, for example, you just double all your ratios. Now that in some cases is a moonshot that you're never going to get to. Most companies can't just double their sales by changing their ratios. But as a business, you can look at those ratios and you can see where were there weaknesses in your system last year that you can close those gaps, that can create strengths for you that will then cause you to sell more or to create more opportunities. And then if you go back to that gross revenue increase, then you can walk through exactly how you're going to get there. And I've found that looking at all my ratios all the way through the funnel is a much more scientific, data-driven process of determining where do I have gaps, how do I close those gaps, and then at the same time, making sure that you don't create weaknesses other places. And I talk about it also in that chapter that you want to make sure that as you go through this process, that you're not fixing one thing and then indirectly breaking something else in the process. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. I love it.
So what process are you using now?
So right now, our CRM, unfortunately, is not one that supports great prospecting tracking. So we are looking in 2025 into implementing something like a Salesforce or some type of prospect software that can really help out with that. Because our CRM does have it, but it's awful in terms of pulling information or even really entering it and tracking it. It's not really what it was built for. So right now, I know you're not going to love this answer, but we're actually doing through an Excel document right now, a very elaborate Excel document, but that's how we're currently tracking.
You got to do what you got to do. I mean, you got to use the tools that you have. How many salespeople do you have in your company?
We have 2.
Okay, 2. So I would give you one piece of advice. Salesforce is going to be way overkill for a small sales team. So I'd be very careful going down that road. Go look at a CRM that's really built for an organization like yours. You're not making a massive investment with something that's really, really complex that's going to, on the other side of the spectrum from spreadsheet, make things way harder for you. There's big companies, big sales organizations. A Salesforce is perfect for them. Smaller organizations, there are lots of really good options out there, and that you may consider. One of the ones that I personally would say take a look at is Zoho. I think they've got a fantastic platform. You've got Pipedrive out there, Nimble, HubSpot. There's a number of them out there that are really built for smaller sales teams. We use HubSpot. And we've got a small sales team, and it's user friendly, and it's easy for you without a lot of resources, not having a lot of resources, to build something that will work for you long term.
Awesome. I wrote those down. Thank you. May I ask another question regarding the 2020?
Absolutely.
So curious to what your opinion is, or what you would have to say about the implementation of a data software like ZoomInfo, UpLead, or Apollo, because we are looking at adding one of those in 2025 and really begin using it. But we really have no idea what the yield is going to be. I know what they say on their websites. I understand what they say that they do, but we haven't used them. So I'm curious to see if you have experience with them and what your opinion is on them. But specifically, like, how, is it going to is it going to increase, things by an average of 15% or not really? What's your take on it?
It would be hard for me to do a diagnostic and say it's going to increase something in your particular business without really understanding your business. But I can tell you my own experience. So at Sales Gravy, we use ZoomInfo, and we love ZoomInfo. We've used them for years and years and years, and it works very well for us. Their AI enhanced experience, and they call their AI Copilot. A lot of companies are calling their AI Copilot, It works really, really well. Our sales manager loves it. She swears by it. It's been fantastic helping us get data. And as we've been looking at our own ratios, how do we put more opportunities in the pipeline, which is really our drive coming on the next year, is getting more things in the pipeline, because our sales team is amazingly efficient at, once they are engaged with a prospect, we close them. We just have to get more in. We are really leaning into ZoomInfo this year to help us really dive into particular verticals, to be able to use Copilot, the AI tool that's in ZoomInfo, to help us understand the different people that are in these companies, to help us multi-thread and have better conversations across the entire enterprise, and also to understand how organizations are connected together, but also to help us build lists faster, so that we can then make calls out to those particular lists. All of these tools that you named are doing, I think, great work around intent data. And intent data is super helpful in understanding buying windows, which is really like the number one qualifier for us. If we understand a buying window is open, you're going to have a whole lot better chance of closing them if they're looking to do something. That intent data is it's good, but it's not perfect. So you still have to do the hard work and the heavy lifting to make the phone calls. So what I would say to you is, personally, I recommend ZoomInfo. That's the tool that I use. I like it better than I like anything else I've tried. But I would say that when you choose to use the tool, you're going to spend money on these things. They're expensive. You have to use it. So you want to make sure that your team is ready to dive in, get the data, use the data, make the outbound prospecting calls around the data, use it for your marketing efforts. But it's a tool that you're actually using it. And I do have experience as a CEO. When we first bought into ZoomInfo, and this is years ago, and this was Discover.org, which was a predecessor to ZoomInfo, we spent about a year where we wasted a lot of money because we bought the tool, but we didn't really have a plan to implement the tool. So it felt really good to have it. Everybody was like congratulating themselves because we had this great tool, but we didn't really use it. And that's when, as a CEO, spending basically my money, I had to really hammer down and get disciplined about teaching our people how to use it, expecting them to use it, and then working with my marketing organization to make sure that they were using it to get lists in front of our team that were good lists that they could prospect into, that we could then add into our database. And now we have it connected because we use HubSpot as our CRM, and we have ZoomInfo connected directly into HubSpot. And that's really helping us with cleaning up our database, making sure that we have all the right information, and then we're using intent data automatically through the AI tool they call Copilot that they have to clean it up and build lists.
I love that. And you just hit on our biggest fear, which is, you're right, it's a huge investment, especially for a smaller company. So our biggest fear is we buy it and then we don't use it for 6 months. Like, I can see that happening unless we make that plan. So I loved your answer. When you actually sat down and made that plan, like you said, after that first year, like, how long did that take you and what did that look like?
It took about a year. To tell you that there's some magic pill that we took and all of a sudden we were using it. Once we got some religion, we're like a lot of small companies. So we've got 32 people on our team, and like so many small companies, we have so many things going. We do this all the time. We'll buy software and then we wake up one day and nobody's using it. As much as I want to tell you that, we're an expert at everything that we do in sales, we're also an expert at failing in sales. And we fail in these cases a lot. And we've learned the hard way. This year, in fact, we purged, I think, $10,000 a month in software out of our P&L because we recognized that we had bought things that no one was using. So when we decided that this was going to be important to us, I think number one was we had to make the decision organizationally that ZoomInfo and the data we were getting from ZoomInfo was valuable to us. And that was a pretty easy thing to do because we were a sales team and we need leads and we need names and we need good lists and better lists, make better prospecting outcomes. So it was easy for us to look in the mirror and say, this is the right tool for us. And it's expensive. This is not for the weak of wallet. You're going to spend some money on this. So that was number one. And I think you have to do that as an organization. You've got to be able to, as leadership, look in the mirror and go, we're bought into this. We're going to use it. So that was number one. And then number two was we had to figure out in our own system, in our own way of going to market, how to use it. We started off by restricting the number of seats that we had to just a handful of people and getting them to become power users. So we found people that said, this is really important to me. I want to use this. And so instead of going all in and buying seats for everybody, we just focused on those people. Now, as we've gone forward, we've expanded the number of seats that we have so that our trainers, for example, our master trainers, they all carry a bag, they all sell, they're all in the trenches. So they have access to it as well because they're building lists and they're going out and prospecting. So as they're teaching people to prospect, they're prospecting. So they're using it as well. So we had to start there. Then we had to look at our workflows, our prospecting list. We had to do a lot of work to make sure that we had aligned our expectations and our workflow with how our salespeople were actually working. So you want to go do that. So how are they prospecting? How are they building lists? We had to train them. And that meant that as leaders, we had to learn it. And that was one of the ahas for me is at the time that we implemented this, I had a smaller team and essentially I'm the sales leader for the team. And I didn't understand how to use it. I had delegated that to the salespeople. That was a major mistake. So I had to go in and become a power user so that I could go teach my people what to do and how to use it. And then finally, as we looked at our ideal customer profile, as we looked at particular verticals that we were going into, and because we're an organization where as the economy changes, different verticals will open up to us as ideal prospects, we had to get better at defining what we were going after and then holding the salespeople accountable for going in and building those lists. And in some cases with our marketing folks, just building the list for them and handing them the list and saying, these are the people you're going to be prospecting today. So being really prescriptive. That whole process to get it ingrained in our culture and make it a part of who we are and make it so that we don't have that anxiety that we're wasting money. Once we bought in, it took about a year to get that ingrained. Today, we're in a completely different place. It's just part of what we do. It's integrated into who we are. And that whole process of making it into a tool that we use that way, even that took 6 years. So I think we implemented ZoomInfo in 2018. So you're talking about 6 years to the day where I would say, we're awesome at it. And it's just integral to our entire sales process and system.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that expansive answer. Last question. Do you guys have something on Sales Gravy University that covers using a software like that?
We don't have that on Sales Gravy University. It's a good question. We probably should have that. And it's something that we really need to work with on some of the software vendors to pull that in. But what I would suggest is probably the best person is Brooke Holt on my team. If you want to reach out to her, I'm sure you met her at Outbound. You can reach out to her and she can kind of walk you through what she's doing with it. She's probably the best person on my team to give you some basic instruction on it.
If she could, that'd be fantastic. I'll absolutely take you up on that. Thank you, Jeb.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. I hope y'all are getting some snow up in Maine, and it's a beautiful state. I love it.
We are. We had a white Christmas.
I love that. That's how awesome is that?
Yeah, it was amazing. Very thankful. Thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yes, sir. Have a good one. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Those were fantastic questions from Eric. And if you've got questions or challenges or roadblocks that are bothering you and you want to get on the show and ask your question, go to salesgravy.com/ask. That's salesgravy.com/ask. Fill out the form and one of our nice producers will be in touch and get you on the show. I'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast.